this episode, you'll get a breakdown of the definition and quote, leisure in the sense of having space, and how to stop equating downtime with being in a rut. Welcome to Energy Alignment for Entrepreneurs, the podcast helping entrepreneurs be free from anxiety, stress, and tension through balancing emotions and consciousness expansion. 3 things you'll learn today. Number 1, the difference between leisure, and number 2, how to create space when you're not yet financially free. And number 3, why always distracting yourself keeps your mind racing like a headless chicken. So the quote, I know it doesn't sound necessarily fancy, but leisure sense of having space. Leisure is not to be confused with doing nothing. Leisure is to have time where you are not working, right? That's like the simplest way I would define leisure. And then in the sense of having space, we're speaking psychologically, but I'll bring one practical example into it just immediately. And that is that space is related to both your psyche and the material. For instance, if your room is just a mess, you feel that in your psyche. Whether you may not say, I'm in a bad mood because my room is messy. But the real fact of the matter is that you have to take into consideration your environment. And hence that quote that everyone's heard, you are going to be like the 5 people who you surround yourself most with. So when you look at your environment, you do something simple like cleaning your room, but that creates space in your heart, in your soul. It gives you a little sense of not necessarily pride, but it gives you a sense of, hey, all right, momentum. It lets you know that you're in motion. And that's why I really feel that it's super important to bridge the philosophical with the practical, right? When you look at the space in the psyche, we're talking about, here's a metaphor. When you have that vent fan button on in the kitchen, it's probably on your microwave or something on your oven. When you have that on, it's like you can almost barely hear anything, right? Because the whole system is just making noise. See, when you have space in your mind, you have less noise in your head. So that doesn't mean that you don't think, but it means that you are present. You see, you can't be present when you're thinking about something that doesn't have to do with right now. And even when you're thinking about right now, the funny part is that sometimes that deters you from being fully present. So when we talk about leisure and space, the bottom line is presence. And why talk about this? Well, because it affects everything, right? It's kind of like if you look at life from the ground up or from the top down, you get a bigger picture understanding. And you start to see what are the things that affect everything. So for me, that's why these conversations, sometimes they may seem philosophical, but they are always practical. And bringing metaphors into the fold is a great way to bridge the metaphysical with the physical. So ultimately, you need to have leisure in your life so that you can be aware of the space in your psyche. And you also do have to work, because that's the way that the human elements are. You have certain fuel. And let's say if you do nothing all day, then you can't sleep. Of course you can't sleep because you didn't burn off the fuel of the daylight. So then come nighttime, you're wired in an unhealthy, weird way. Because naturally, we have fuel and energy, and we need to burn off our energy. So it's all up to you. The reason why I don't like to make things too practical is because everyone's energy is a little bit different. And there's structures, there's styles, there's types to energy. And speaking in that structural manner can give you an almost universally applicable way of moving through your life. Now, all that being said, let's look at point number one, the difference between leisure and having nothing to do. Well, immediately, right, we just spoke on you have the fuel and you need to burn the fuel. So the thing with leisure is that you can get to better understand the nature or the essence which drives you when you have time to get to know yourself. Leisure is the time to get to know yourself. So let's say you work an 8-hour shift. Cool, that's necessary. And then in your time off, you are going to feel better because you had worked. Now, that being said, there's a importance that has to be kind of paid attention to, which is your attitude, because that'll corrupt your leisure time. So when you are off and you don't necessarily have so many things to do, you could look at it as in, oh man, poor attitude. Or you could realize that there are other types of activities for you to do. For example, you're not going to necessarily be stretching for 30 minutes at work, but at home, you can. When you have leisure, you can stretch and get to know your body. Like if you create an honest relationship with yourself through leisure, then you'll learn to see how to enjoy not being busy. The trouble is that so many of us, we busy ourselves, but not in a healthy way. We do it as a form of distraction. Hence the term workaholic or workaholism, like it is a addiction. Because we're all, not necessarily everyone is running from something, but a lot of people are running from something in their lives. And the thing with leisure is it gives you that space to see yourself in those moments that you used to always be busy. You get to understand your what you are, the way your mind works, the way your body works, the relationship between inputs and outputs, cause and effect. And then you can create even this thing which I would label stillness. You can, through meditation, through stress, you can take the time to change the way that you are. Because let's make this simple. In life, most of us are usually talking to someone, listening to something, or working. Like we're doing things. Our attention has to be split in so many different ways so often in waking life. What happens if you are to change that, right? To sit down without stimulus and to center your energy not on any one thing necessarily, but you maybe have your eyes closed, but you're not laying down, you're sitting. Your posture is in a way where you are not having to strain. You're sitting and you're centered. You start to notice, oh, I'm tense in my shoulder. Let me relax that. Oh, I'm thinking about this. Let me let go of that thought, right? And as you create this stillness, it's not by force, it's not by desire, it's just by taking the time to devote yourself to creating some space for your heart, for your soul, for your spirit. And this doesn't mean you can't be successful, doesn't mean you can't work. No, obviously, you got to burn off your energy. But at some point in life, you have to come and let your energy mend and hone itself. And this is a practice of not even routine or habit. You may do something daily, but it's not like you do it because you have to, right? I would say that's the downside to a habit is you start to force yourself to do something. And now discipline comes in, right? You've heard, of course, like you're going to have to do things you don't want to do in life. What I would say is you get really good at noticing that weak part of you which doesn't want to do what is right. what is healthy, what would change you into a better person. What actually happens is you subtract and subtract and subtract all the weakness within you until life is clear and it's obvious. The healthy, correct decisions are made naturally. So then you don't have to discipline or force yourself into doing something which is good, right? Because that's the trouble with a habit. So you may argue or say, um, well, wouldn't a habit be better than just doing the wrong thing all the time, like forcing yourself to do something good? And I would say, I hear where you're coming from. Everyone has to start somewhere. So if you are used to doing something or living in a certain way that you know you cannot continue living, and then you want to instill some habits, it may be hard. You may not want to work out. Yes, I hear you. So sometimes you do have to force yourself to do things that you know are better in the big picture, but the thing is, you need to let your heart change so that you no longer need to force yourself to do what's right. So that you just see clearly, oh yeah, there is a plethora, a multitude of reasons to align myself with what is right. And you feel the fruit of learning from listening to your heart because your heart is always teaching you. Let's go into point number 2. How to create space when you're not yet financially free. This is a big one for me, but at the same time, you don't want to make it dramatic. So the fact is that you are where you are in life, and you may be building things, working on things, but there comes a balance. And you do need to be almost obsessed with what you love, but also understand how to not break yourself, how to not um, make the elastic band snap back in a way where the band has broken. Pull the band, but then let the band come back without breaking. In relationship to financial freedom, you gotta step into the uncomfortable zone. You have to say yes to opportunities. You have to be open minded. But it's important to realize that life is never just about one thing. And if you obsess too much over financial freedom and you don't take care of your health and you throw away your relationships, you're going to have a big problem. If you really feel you're meant to be wealthy, then work hard, work really hard. But don't forget to stretch, to go on walks, to have hard conversations, to take time to not be working 24/7. Because if you're always working, then everything else will crumble. So you gotta have that balance of health, relationships, financial freedom, building the business, and the obsession with whatever it is that you do best, right? Now, point number 3, why always distracting yourself keeps your mind racing like a headless chicken. And this is kind of, okay, the thing with a lot of us is we don't even realize why we do what we do. So I would say that question, if you were to take the time to write it at the top of a piece of paper and genuinely take 15 minutes to go through, all right, why do I do insert the things that most of your time goes into, right? And then when you get the first answer, question, okay, why do I do this? And for each big thing that you put a lot of time into, go at least 3 layers deep. So, first layer, why? Second layer, why do I do this? Third layer, why do I do this? And you'll start to see the nature of what you are, right? There's so many layers. So I preface with that because distracting yourself a lot of the times is a unconscious protective mechanism. It's like we don't want to sit because when we sit and we start to notice, then we begin to see through the illusion of the identity, who we see ourselves to be. With less distraction, you have the opportunity to hear the noise or the dial or the volume of your internal chatter. And when you lessen that internal chatter, it gets a little bit scary because you start to see, oh my gosh, I am so much more than just my thinking mind. I can feel so much more than just my thoughts, right? Because a lot of us, we get programmed or we are never taught that we are both the sky and the clouds. We are both the thoughts that we have and the consciousness which recognizes we are thinking. And the importance really is that as you recognize this, your heart changes, it opens. You learn how to move through life still with speed, but a precise speed. And then you know when to dial down the throttle. You can feel. It's like you're surfing, right? You have to be able to feel what the wave is doing to let it guide and carry you when on the surfboard. So, the recap number one, the difference between leisure and having nothing to do. Leisure is not the sense of having nothing to do, but rather the sense of having space to enjoy your time each day. This space is almost the opposite of being in a rut. It's really unrelated from being in a rut. When you have space in your being, you're going to feel free. You're going to have great days. So you don't always have to be busy to enjoy your life. Now, how to create space when you're not yet financially free? Even in the process of not having financial leisure, you can create space for at least some leisure. This may involve realizing that rest and waking up early means more to you than going out late. Now, number three, why always distracting yourself keeps your mind racing? Like continuous distraction and entertainment, it's going to keep your mind ever going. In isolation, it allows you to see what matters most to you. It gives you clarity when you take the time to understand the layers, right? Do that journal practice. Now, ultimately, you have to choose to be alone more often so you can see the structure of your life clearly. And then you'll align your actions with what matters most to you, and you'll have beautiful relationships sprout, and everything you really desire or ever needed will come into your life because you'll know what matters most to you. So, thank you so much for listening. New episodes are out Monday, Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and share it with a friend. Thank you so much.